Welcome to the Leading Sheep webinar series on nutritional management of spring lambing merinos to rear more lambs, featuring Dr John Milton from Independent Lab Services in Western Australia.
So we've got the lambs on board. We know we've got a lot of twins, but we know there can be problems. We aren't there yet. We're a long way from the money. And we know to rear more lambs, we need to reduce the loss of twins around birth. People say, well, I just like singles. Well, if you're getting 90% lambing out of as single lambs, you're not going to make you're not going to have a lot of animals if that's fine, if you are getting that, but you're always going to have some twins, particularly in good years. And so you've got to learn, we've got to work out ways to manage them. We've got to find ways to better management. And I've had the privilege and pleasure work in this area for a number of years with some wonderful students who've made some major breakthroughs in this area, and I'm going to share those with you now. Our group here at UWA has been working in this area along with our French colleagues for nearly 30-odd years, and I think we have made progress. Merino ewes often lose their lambs, or may lose their lambs soon after birth, their twin lambs soon after birth. Often the cause is desertion. Now we know that colostrum can play a role to reduce these losses. And the key is that the ewe must have runny colostrum so the lambs can suck within the first hour of birth. First hour after birth, they must get up and suck. We know from our research that some twin bearers have no colostrum or only pasties colostrum for up to 6 hours after birth. And consequently, the result is going to be twins will be lost around the time of birth. Well, how can we increase this colostrum production to reduce the loss of twin lambs? Our work has shown that a large increase in nutrient intake in the last week of pregnancy reduces the level of progesterone, the hormone of pregnancy, the hormone that maintains the integrity of the uterine wall to keep it all together. But also, this hormone blocks the enzymes that are responsible for lactogenesis or colostrogenesis, that is the formation of colostrum, particularly lactose. So lactose is the sugar in the milk which has the osmotic pull, exerts an osmotic pull in the milk, in the colostrum or the milk. Now the progesterone blocks the synthesis of that lactose. And so if we can reduce the level of progesterone in the blood quickly, this will facilitate the onset of colostrum production. So the ewe will have colostrum, an udder full of colostrum at birth when she lambs. We know that if extra glucose is available for colostrum synthesis just before lambing, the ewe will accumulate a lot of runny colostrum in the udder for the newly born lambs to suck. Now the thing is, I talked about lactose, the milk sugar. Once the lactose is formed in the milk from the glucose from the blood, then that pulls the liquid in to make the volume of colostrum a lot larger, but along with it come all the other goodies that are in colostrum. So you don't end up just with a watery colostrum, you end up with a big volume of good quality colostrum. Admittedly, the immunoglobulin is a bit more diluted because, as I'll show you, that volume can be increased markedly. So how can we achieve all this? We're achieving a number of physiological responses in the animal. So how can we achieve it? We feed a large supplement in the week before lambing to give the ewes a lot of glucose and some extra protein. This story isn't finished yet. It's unfinished business. We've got a lot. We know there's other supplements we can probably use. We've got some very interesting results. So watch this space, I suppose, is the thing to say. Here's the work that really kicked it off. This is the work of Georgette Banchero. Georgette did her PhD with me and Dave Lindsay here at UWA and Graham Martin, and unfortunately she thought she was coming to work with the gurus, but she got stuck with me. And so she had given up a scholarship to go to New Zealand and came and worked with us, so we had a big responsibility for Georgette, and she turned out to be a wonderful student and a very dear friend. Colostrum, in this slide, what we're showing is corn or barley as a supplement to a basal diet. You'll see down the left side the treatments were cracked corn. Just need to preface the fact that we now don't use cracked corn. The sheep have got a very good hammer mill in their head to crack the corn. We do still use whole barley, but you'll see the massive increase in colostrum production. 229 grams, 292, say 300 grams to 600 grams, you like, doubled it, okay, by feeding those extra feed, I must emphasise, of about 600 grams of each of those grains. If we look at the viscosity, that is the runniness of the colostrum, on the basal diet, we scored them 1 to 7. 1 is peanut butter, 7 is runny milk, virtually, or runny colostrum, very runny colostrum, just like milk. And you'll see the basal diet, 4.3, but the point to note here is the large variation, the CV, the coefficient of variation, 42%. So there were some ewes had pretty runny colostrum, others peanut butter. But when we fed the corn and the barley, that CV came right down. The viscosity was markedly reduced, so it became much more runny, and the CV, so all the ewes had runny colostrum, or a bigger proportion, a much greater proportion. We've gone from 42% CV to 15, 16. We also, so here we've achieved the objective to get that plenty of runny colostrum. Here we can see a slight increase in the birth weight, not significant, but biologically would be of significance. The 300 gram and the 600 gram birth weight in a single at 3.5, or a twin at 3.5 kilos is biologically important. So the conclusion to this process, this strategy, is we use corn or barley as an extra feed. In the fire, you're feeding them according to their requirements for pregnancy. So you feed them corn or barley as an extra feed in the final week of pregnancy to increase the amount of runny colostrum available to the twins at birth, and with a slight lift in their birth weight. So we're getting this slight lift in their birth weight, but we've got heaps of runny colostrum as well for these heavier little tackers to get hold of and suck. Bottom line here, we've got more runny colostrum in the udder of lambing, allows those twin lambs to get adequate colostrum to meet their needs for energy, antibodies, and water. Now, people always talk about, oh, you've got to get their colostrum to get their antibodies. Yes, very true, but they've got at least 12 hours to get those antibodies. But if they're not with their mum, they won't get any, and they'll die, they'll perish. Okay, so they need energy, they need their antibodies, and they need water, particularly in a hot environment, because being a young animal, they're probably around 80% water, and they will desiccate very quickly. They'll dehydrate very quickly. So all those points said, I think the most important part here, and as I've said, furthermore, by the ewe suckling her lamb soon after birth, the ewe-lamb bond is strengthened. We have to dive into a bit of neurophysiology here, but essentially it is quite a fascinating process. So how do we strengthen that ewe-lamb bond? If we've got that ewe-lamb bond strengthened, both lambs are more likely to follow the ewe when she moves off the birth site. So the outcome is more ewes rearing twins, which is what we want. Now, just going back a little bit on that neurophysiology, the suckling process, that actual suckling, what happens, I talked about that ewe on the birth site, that ewe at the time of lambing coming up to being attracted to the placenta, and that's all part of this surge in maternal bond, or surge in the maternal sites in the brain. The stretching of the birth canal on the point of lambing stimulates the maternal sites in the brain, So that ewe then wants to be a mother. She wants to take a lamb, and that's why she'll steal a lamb. Okay, and that's why we see all the behaviour of those ewes around the point of lambing. Now, that maternal bonding, that maternal stimulation of the maternal instinct, or the maternal sites in the brain to elicit the instinct, is brought about by the hormone oxytocin. But it's oxytocin actually secreted inside the brain. It's not if you gave oxytocin injection, it wouldn't do it. It has to be inside the brain to stimulate those maternal sites. But what happens is when that ewe suckles those lambs with that, it's now sucking that runny colostrum, that stimulates the posterior pituitary to secrete oxytocin for the milk letdown response. And when that oxytocin is released, the squeeze the smooth muscles and pushes the colostrum into the milk cistern, and the lambs are sucking away there, and then the little tail engages, and you know that the show's underway. But there's other things happening. That the oxytocin is soon cleared from the blood, but as the posterior pituitary is filling up again with oxytocin being secreted back into the, it leaks back inside the brain, and that stimulates the maternal sites again and again. So each time she's suckling, she's reinforcing that maternal bonding. So the key is to get that first suckle, to get that lamb suckling and taking in that runny colostrum. And the other part is that the lamb also plays a role. By the sheer fact that he actually sucks, the suckling, and our colleagues in France, Raymond Novak has done work just giving them water, and then they will suckle more. So the actual suckling reflex in the lamb has an effect. And the story gets even more exciting because it's been shown from some work in Poland that colostrum actually has a compound in it which has a cognitive properties called clostinonin. And there's been some work done, interestingly, with some Alzheimer's patients. So bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen, if you see me as an old bloke around following old ewes around and they said he's lost his marbles, I might be onto that story. Okay. Anyhow, the bottom line to all this with this colostrum strategy is we need more ewes rearing those twins.